the sections you deal with is called the argument from symbolism. I was wondering if maybe you can just kind of give us a little bit of insight on what that is.
Wow. Yeah, that actually has been more of a Catholic argument. It does appear in people like C.S. Lewis. But this is an argument that says that there are culturally transcendent differences between men and women. Well, it also, again, part of it has to do with the argument that Jesus is a male figure. In the Old Testament, the God of the Old Testament, there are no goddesses. There is Yahweh is a male God. The apostles were male. But then that also picks up on that there are these differences between men are naturally transcendent, is the way the word, and women tend to be more immanent. I think that the New Testament argument is more helpful. I mean, the question is, why is it that the God of the Old Testament is a male God? There's a really helpful woman I draw on, a Jewish woman named Tikva Breimer-Kensky, has a helpful book called Dealing with Goddesses in Ancient Culture, and the title slips my mind. But one of the things that she points out in that book is that, first, the God of the Old Testament is not a male God in the sense of sexually male. For example, God is never described below the waist. He doesn't have a consort or a bride. He's male in the sense of there's one God for Israel. So it is monotheism that makes Israel distinct. One of the really interesting things that happens in Israel is that because there is no goddess, that the nation of Israel takes the place of the goddesses in pagan religion. So Israel becomes the bride. And this actually elevates women, and it elevates human beings. And the same thing takes place in the New Testament. The church is the bride of Christ. So yeah, I do think it's important to recognize that the God of the Old Testament is not sexually a male God. That's a misunderstanding. There are reasons why, and I talk about these in my book about why did Jesus choose 12 apostles who were male, and that basically has to do with the typology of the Old Testament, that Israel was indeed a patriarchal culture. Israel traces its heritage back to the 12 male sons of Jacob. There are 12 tribes because there are 12 sons. There are 12 apostles who represent the church as the new Israel. If there had been 13 apostles, it would not have worked. If Jesus had called women apostles, again, it would not have fulfilled the symbolism. But Jesus did call women to be his disciples, who, except for the 12, seemed to be doing everything that his male followers were doing. That's sort of, and then for the arguments about male transcendence and female immanence, I just find that to be a little bit bizarre that people are using arguments like that these days. I would, what I say in my book is this is an example of what I call natural theology in a bad sense. That is, where you're taking a notion of symbolism from outside of Scripture and imposing it on Scripture. So the people who talk that way tend to look toward things like Jungian psychology, the imagery in pagan religions, sun gods, moon goddesses. And my reading of that says that is just simply not the way you read Scripture. You don't look to ancient, to Hinduism or ancient Greek religions or Jungian psychology and then say, let's read the New Testament in light of that. Rather, the New Testament should be challenging that kind of reading. And it is interesting, and again, I mentioned Tikva Breimer-Kensky, this Jewish woman. She points out that Scripture does not treat women as somehow inherently different from men. Women in the Old Testament they live do the kind of things that women would have done in ancient culture. They're primarily mothers, but they're not somehow viewed as being a different kind of person, as if women are less rational. Women are more subject to temptation. They're portrayed the same way that men are portrayed. So I think that these kinds of books, I think, can be really helpful. People who actually look back on what's going on, and I think that people who are, if I use the conservative reading, I'm talking about culturally conservative. I think people who are culturally progressive can actually make the same mistake of reading things from our culture back into first century or ancient cultures, and then either embracing that or being appalled by it, rather than saying how does what's going on in the New Testament speak to the issues of the first century culture, and then how might those, in a very different culture, how might those same the same theology you find in the New Testament speak to our culture without in any way denying or questioning the authority of the scriptures, which I don't think are primarily sexist or don't primarily teach a hierarchical understanding of the relationships between men and women, and certainly do not advocate some kind of slavery based on race. That reading of the New Testament by some people, particularly in this country, in the South, in the 19th century during the Civil War, was simply a radical misreading, I think.
Hey, thank you so much for checking out this video clip from the Delgado Podcast. To get more videos like this, simply subscribe here on YouTube. You can also download the full episode of each show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or your favorite podcast player. Take care.